Most of all, I want to thank all of you because at the end of the day, the work that we do on behalf of the nation's people, we do it because we hear from the people of the country. And through the President's initiative on America's Great Outdoors, our efforts to conserve the very special places of America are based on wanting to know what it is that the community wants. And so when I was here in January, we heard loud and clear from all of you that you wanted Fort Ord to be made into a national monument. You remember when I took that vote at the end of our meeting, it was 100%, and I let the President know that. So give yourselves a round of applause because you've made this day. It's also a special honor for me to be here on Armed Forces Day because it is a very special day as we celebrate our men and women in the military, and it's good to do it with the dedication of America's newest national monument. With his signature, President Obama has preserved this special place for all Americans and all of the visitors to America for all time. And the April 20th proclamation, though, was far more than one action of one president. It was a culmination of years of work by you here in Monterey to protect one of the last remaining expanses of coastal open space on the Central Coast. You came together to honor those who served their country here at Fort Ord, to tell the stories of the 1.5 million soldiers who trained here since World War I, and to invite the world to experience the hallowed ground and the adventures it has to offer. You in this community had a vision for what Fort Ord could be. With Fort Ord National Monument, you now have an economic engine for your community that will power tourism, recreation, and small business for decades to come. Today, we celebrate your accomplishments, but I want you to know that you are not alone in this celebration. Fort Ord exemplifies a type of conservation project that is most important to President Obama in the implementation of the America's Great Outdoors initiative. In New York, in St. Louis, in the Everglades of Florida, in the Flint Hills of Kansas, in the crown of the continent in Montana, in the Dakota grasslands, from sea to shining sea, all across this great country, we're implementing initiatives like the one that we see today. And across the country, we're seeing a groundswell of new parks, open spaces, river restorations, trails, and other projects that are renewing communities and repowering local economies. The bottom line is simple: conservation equals tourism, jobs, and a better quality of life. Let me say that again. Conservation equals tourism, jobs, and a better quality of life. And that's a big reason why so many communities are with us here today. Marina, Seaside, Delray, Oaks, Monterey, Salinas, Sand City, Pacific Grove, Monterey County, and so many others. But you're also here because Fort Ord speaks to us as to who we are as Americans. By dedicating Fort Ord on Armed Service Day, we pay special tribute to the many generations of American heroes who trained and served here. And we are reminded that with service members in harm's way around the world, we must recommit ourselves to supporting them and supporting their families. That's one of the reasons that starting today, this May 17th, we are distributing annual passes that will grant free access to service members and their dependents to 2,000 recreational areas around the United States of America. It's an annual pass that will allow our active men and women in the military and their families to access Bureau of Land Management properties, National Park Service units like Yosemite and Yellowstone, Bureau of Reclamation recreational areas, National Forest Service areas, Army Corps of Engineers areas. These public lands are now available free of access as a measure of gratitude by the American people to the men and women who are actively serving in our military today. So today, let's celebrate America's newest national monument. Let's celebrate this economic engine from Monterey, and let's salute our men and women in uniform and all those who have given of themselves to serve our country. With that, what I want to do is to turn it over to a singular Herculean champion, joined by many other people of that same vintage, but Congressman Farr, who really is the person who has made much of today possible. Congressman Sam Farr.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. It's wonderful to have you out here again. I'm impressed with how quickly you take action and get things done. To Nancy Sutley, introduce her at the end of my speech, but Nancy is really instrumental. She's as the Secretary said coming up here, she sits at the right hand of the President on every environmental issue. To David Hughes, thanks for your career of service, and thank you for coming out again to this area. And Bob Abbey, who's the director of BLM, what an incredible leadership you provided. To Colonel Clark, thank you for your garrison leadership. The garrison is responsible for all of the military land still in this region, of which the DLI and much of Fort Ord is still in his responsibility. He's essentially, as garrison commander, the mayor of the military properties. And to all our Central Coast leaders, we have a lot of elected officials here today, and in their daily responsibility, they make the operations of whether it's land use planning and zoning and the difficulties of economic development. To FORA and to the leadership FORA has been provided by Michael Humard. I really appreciate that you're all here. Today is about land and about people. On one level, we are here in Palarcitos Canyon. We're here because the President gave us this new name, Fort Ord National Monument, and in so doing recommended the federal government to use the wise management of open spaces, of flora and fauna and history. So I want to take this opportunity to thank publicly. Last time I saw him was returning from Colombia and putting a bug in his ear about this, but I never got a chance to see him or personally thank him, but I want to publicly thank him for stepping up to the plate to take the great action to call this and name this a monument. But we're also an area about people. The first people that were here for thousands of years, the Esalen, and they called this place home. Thousands of years without destruction. The area we call Monterey Bay is where California history began. I'm always like to remind people that if you look at California, why didn't we become the San Diego or Los Angeles or San Francisco Bay Area of development and growth? It's because of agriculture and because of people, the early commerce was off the land. And why would you want to destroy or build out on that which gave you the food and the fiber and the trade products to sail out of Monterey Bay off to Acapulco or Manila or Lima. The 19th century brought agriculture here, and people who built this region are still here. Next door is one of the original families here, the Merrill family, still own at the mouth of this canyon where it opens up to the Salinas River. They're still ranching there today. The 20th century brought soldiers to this place, and it was they who gave us the name we now use, Fort Ord. If you were here 40 years ago in this spot, you would be known as Training Area 18. This is the area that in 1917 the field artillery site for World War I soldiers came from the nearby Presidio. The cavalry trained here in the 20s and 30s, and I remember my father telling me stories when he was a student at Berkeley, and the University of California would come down here with their young ROTC students for summer training. He reminded me that the Berkeley Cal students they were the infantry, they had to walk, and the Stanford students were the cavalry, they got to ride horses. So when they would go out and bivouac at night, the Cal students would make sure that all the horses were released and had to run home. So the Stanford students would have to walk home. But this area was named Camp Ord, then in honor of Major General Edward Ord, who was a U.S. Army leader during the Civilian War. In 1941, Fort Ord became an Army basic training installation where many of the World War II soldiers received their first taste of the Army. And we're going to keep a museum here and history of them for history. As many as 50,000 were gathered here to train and defend democracy, the role that continued during the Korean War and later in the Vietnam War. In 1973, Fort Ord became the home of the 7th Infantry, and everyone thought that that would be here forever. And in that time frame of all the soldiers training here, as the Secretary said, about 1.5 million soldiers passed through here and had an experience here. And that's why we're struggling today to try to make sure that part of this land is set aside in their memory in a veterans, a national veterans cemetery. And hopefully with the leadership of Bill Monning, who's here today, and the California legislature, we can get this done. It's also important to recognize the service of the military members and their families who still call Fort Ord their home. That's why you've all helped me in being able to obtain a new VA and DOD clinic that will be built in Marina to service the men and women in uniforms, families that are stationed here, and for the veterans who live in this greater Monterey Bay area. The BRAC closure of this base, which was the biggest in history, and I finally tell people, because of going through that, we're still going through it, that I'm probably the most experienced BRAC Congress member in Congress, and understanding how the reuses can be made with local support. And out of that, we were able to have a reuse plan. You see, all of you came here today and you're experiencing the effects of that reuse plan. We're now right between Ferraris and mortarboards. The graduation of California State University, which was all created post closure of Fort Ord to show that we could convert swords into plowshares, and today they're celebrating a graduation ceremony. And the land that we now call Laguna Seca was given by the Army to the County of Monterey as a park back in the early 60s. So people have come here to recreate, come here to have motorcycle races and road races, have come here to graduate from college, and it's no accident that people have come to the backcountry here at Fort Ord. People on bicycles and on horses and walking. And those bicycles users have now created the largest bicycle event of its type in the world, which is called the Sea Otter Classic. Brought some, I think about 50,000 people here just a few weeks ago. All of this is recreational use. It's built upon the vibrant and diverse base of support for this place. And I might add that the army of volunteers who have mobilized to bring this monument to our attention, Mr. Secretary, people have been coming out here for weeks to get rid of, for years, to get rid of the invasive species, to essentially work with the cleanup process to make sure that trails are built and maintained. And I think probably the person who's been at this longest, he happens to be an employee of yours. He's now mayor of Marina, is Bruce Delgado. And Bruce, when I arrived here, someone ought to build a statue to Bruce, because he's been the voice of the BLM lands. It's certainly been his job, but I didn't know when you came, Mr. Secretary, that as mayor of Marina, he'd be assigned the job of parking cars.
It's the most important job.
So this is really a place that we know what it is. It's for solitude, for adventure, for getting in touch with the environment, but it's about people. And I can't help but say that I think that part of the ability to preserve so much of Monterey County and the Central Coast has been because of agriculture. And we so often don't think about how important it is. But I sit on I'm ranking member on the Agriculture Appropriations Committee, and I can assure you there is no other region of the United States, no other county that produces $4.5 billion in sales, grows 85 different crops, leading area on organic growing in the world, and a huge boon to our local economy. But it's also been the military that's been here, and we realize that the military is pretty much left when 33,000 people left Fort Ord. But we still have Naval Postgraduate School, Defense Language Institute, and numerous other institutions around the Bay, and we put them together in a team called Team Monterey of all the military interests. There's 9 of them, and we've learned that the Defense Department is still spending $1.5 billion in Monterey County on military. And what I like about the military that come here is they come here to get smart. If you're going to have a leaner military, which we will have in the future, you're going to have a smarter military. You're going to have to learn the languages and the cultures, and they're going to have to learn how to do management of limited resources. And this is the place in the world where you come to do that. So this monument is about recognizing the people and the land, but it's really about the people who make their living in our region, which is the tourism process. And I think the Secretary's noted how much of cultural and conservation preservation can lead to growth of tourism and to jobs in our region. So I just want you all to realize the importance that Secretary Salazar has played in this. Today it's about another day of history, and that's why you're all here. This is unique. It's not going on anyplace else in the United States today. The signing of this proclamation is forever preserving this land in its ultimate preservation status. It's a day that we can look back and tell our grandchildren we were there when it happened. But I want to say that these things don't happen without a lot of teamwork. Teamwork to get the local politics, the local priority of saying this is important to us, that's you. You can't be a congressman or a secretary or a president without first going to the voters. And you are those people. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I also want to thank the other side, which is once the people have spoken and petitioned their government, they asked our federal government. And the Secretary came here with many of the people you see sitting here, listened to you, saw the enthusiasm and excitement. And so often these things just then get lost. But not, I mean, to going from that town hall meeting to today in 3 months is unheard of. This is probably the fastest monument ever accelerated. History might even say it's faster than Air Force One. So what a great day, and I just want to thank you all for coming out, in particular our men and women in uniform, as we celebrate the Armed Forces Days at the same time. And I think that the greatest tribute we can give is in a saying that I remember Native Americans who started this whole land preservation effort, was that if sort of the definition of patriotism, and that patriotism isn't so much the defense of our defending the land of our forefathers. It's more about the preservation of the land of our children. You did a great job of preserving the land of our children. Thank you.